This is a nice, large, oval-shaped blue gemstone. Our friend wants me to recut this into a Whirlpool design, so I'll give it a try. He was told by the gemstone seller that this gem is lab-created topaz, but I'm not sure that labs are creating topaz. They are heating topaz to change the color, but I'm not sure they are growing topaz in the lab, at least not yet and not commercially, but I'm not certain. Also, this gemstone is an example of a windowed gemstone. A window effect occurs where you cut a gemstone at the wrong angles and you exceed the critical angle of the gem material. When this happens, light goes into the gemstone from the top, but is not reflected back after hitting the angles in the bottom of the stone. Instead, light just passes through the gemstone. No bling. A telltale sign that you have a windowed stone is if you can read written words like read the newspaper through the gemstone. And as you can see, this is clearly a windowed stone. Years ago, I attended some excellent training from the Gemological Institute of America on gem identification. I highly recommend the GIA gem identification courses. I've slowly been accumulating some or all of the equipment and tools needed to outfit my own home gem identification lab. Some of the equipment's still at the store with BOPIE where it needs to be, but I'm slowly getting some here. I've finally begun to create my laboratory, or as the Brits say, laboratory. So let me introduce you to my gem lab, a work in progress. I call it my bamboo laboratory, mainly because the equipment for my lab will all reside on this old Chinese bamboo desk from the Qin dynasty of China. I hope to be able to give you an update on my lab when I finally get it the way I want it, but this is pretty much it for now. Okay, I'm going to take a reading off of our mystery stone with my old refractometer that years ago I got from GIA. I don't know, I think these are still available. They may have updated the model, but the way it works is you put a light source into the back and you put a drop of refractometer liquid, which is pretty nasty stuff. You put a tiny drop of that on top of the plate here, and that makes sure the stone that you are testing will get a clean reading. Then you put the stone on top of the drop, put the light source out, you look through the eyepiece about, for me it's about 10 inches away, and you see a line between a scale. You read the number on the line, and that's the refractive index, and then you look it up either with the various refractive indexes they printed on the machine itself, or you can go online and check the refractive index, and that tells you what the stone is. So I'm going to test it here on my bamboo lab. This is not a video on how to use the refractometer. GIA already has produced a great video on using the refractometer, and if I were to duplicate what they've already produced in their video, this video would be very lengthy on how to use the refractometer. If you want to learn more about the refractometer tool, go to the GIA website and look at their video on how to use a refractometer. I'm just giving you a very quick intro to the refractometer. Now, one of the first steps in gem identification is the color test. You just basically look at the gemstone and try to determine what it could be based on the color. And for the color test, this gemstone could be topaz because it has the right color for blue topaz. The next test, or another test to use, is to check the refractive index of the gemstone. And for that, you need the refractometer, because that measures how light passes through this gem. And each gem material has its own refractive index. And when I use my refractometer on this gemstone, I get a refractive index of 1.52. So could this be topaz? No. The refractive index for topaz is around 1.61. So I don't really need to make any more tests, as this gemstone is not topaz, period. Now, I could go through a number of other tests to determine what this gemstone actually is, but that's not my goal here. I know that it's not topaz. I suspect this is glass, as the refractive index of glass is 1.52. But again, I'm not trying to determine what exactly this material is, just what it's not topaz. Now later, when I polish this gemstone, I'll be conducting another gem identification test, one that they don't teach you in the GIA class, and that is, if this was topaz, it would polish with aluminum oxide. If it was glass, it would polish with cerium oxide. So that will be just another test to prove if this is not topaz. It won't definitely prove it's glass, as other gem polishing materials polishes with cerium oxide, but it will prove it's not topaz. I have cut the Whirlpool design before. I like the design. The design I used was created by Arya Akhavan, who's a great gem faceting diagram designer. And here's the design, just so you don't have to search all over the web for this design, which Arya put into the public domain for all cutters to use. Thanks again, Arya. Your designs are always awesome. Okay, so our friend wants this gemstone recut into a Whirlpool design, which is a round design, and which has a kind of a deep pavilion. So he knows that there's going to be a lot of loss of rough because this is an oval, and you turn an oval into a round, it's going to be at best as wide as the narrow part of the oval, and the long part of the oval is going to lose a lot. And since this is not, it's got a very shallow crown, there's going to be a lot of loss of rough, but that's what he wants. So we'll see how this turns out. Go ahead and cut it into a Whirlpool design. Okay, I've gone over our what is not lab created topaz one time with the 240 grit diamond on a topper lap. Got the length I checked with my crown to width ratio given to you in the diagram, the C/W, and I've got the width okay. If it's this wide, I've got enough rough to cut the crown. So my width is okay. I didn't have to lose a lot of width. It's pretty much the same width as the width of the oval. Not the length, we lost the length, but the width. I do have to cut it a little bit smaller because I'm not quite to a center point on the culet. Right here, this shiny is the original culet. So I have a little bit more to cut in. And down a little bit. So I'll move on to my my next level topper, which would be my 310 grit diamond on a topper lap. I pre-polished our Whirlpool design with 3000 grit diamond on a bat lap, and now I'm going to polish it. Now, if this was topaz, then I would use aluminum oxide, but I think it's not. Well, I'm sure it's not. I think it might be glass, in which case I'm going to use the Creamway lap by Gear Loose and spray of cerium oxide and water. Cerium oxide is what's used by optometrists when they grind glasses for your prescription. So that's what's used to polish glass. So I'll give it a try on this stone, and if it polishes up, well, that won't prove that it's glass, but it'll prove that it's not topaz. So let's give it a try. Okay, our stone is polished right up with cerium oxide. So now I'll transfer the stone and cut the upper half of our Whirlpool design. So I wanted to show you the contrast between a finish on the stone of using a 600 grit lap versus a my 12M, which is a 1500 grit lap. So I'll continue to work pre-polishing this stone with my 12M, and then I'll use the creamway lap and cerium oxide and water spray and polish the crown, and then I'll be ready to polish the table. Okay, I finished polishing the crown of our not topaz Whirlpool design. So now I will set up my Ultratech to cut the table and polish the table, and then we'll be done with this stone. The table polished up beautifully with cerium oxide, so now I will soak it in the attack, take the two-part epoxy off. We'll be able to weigh and measure this stone and send it back to the customer. Gem identification is a process that involves multiple steps. I only used a couple of the multitude of steps available in the process of determining if this gemstone was lab-created topaz or not. Because again, I wasn't trying to find out what this material is, only trying to see if it was topaz. First, the color test. Our gemstone had the same color of topaz, so it passed the color test. The second was the refractive index test using a refractometer, and it is definitely not topaz based on the refractive index. Our gemstone has the same refractive index as glass, so I suspect it to be glass, but I'm not certain. I have to perform more tests if I was interested in determining what this gemstone is. Definitely not topaz. Then another test that only cutters can use, and that is, what does it take to polish the gemstone? Well, it polished up quite easily with cerium oxide. If it was topaz, we would expect it to polish up not with cerium oxide, but instead with aluminum oxide. So again, not topaz. Glass, on the other hand, is polished with cerium oxide. Eye doctors use the cerium oxide to grind and polish the lenses of glasses for their patients. So is this gemstone topaz? No way. Is this gemstone glass? Possibly, and I suspect so, but I couldn't just state definitively without more testing, and I'm not really other tests, but just kind of some detective work. I did contact 3 of the labs that I work with that create lab-created gem rough, and none of them produce lab-created topaz. I'm not saying there's no lab that does, I don't know. I'm just saying the labs I know of don't. I also didn't use a simple test like the Mohs hardness test, where I could have seen what material would or would not scratch our gemstone, and thus an indication of the hardness. If it scratched with a fingernail, that's one hardness, a copper penny, a nail. And I did prepare a video previously on the Mohs hardness test, the Mohs scale. And here's the link if you want to watch that video so you learn about the Mohs hardness and another test you can perform on gemstones very simply. I also didn't look for the telltale signs of cleavage, which you would expect to find with topaz. Again, no need. The refractometer proved this is not topaz. As far as the Whirlpool design, it looks great. Really like the design almost as much as I like the Portuguese design for round gemstones. The final gemstone turned out large, just like our friend wanted. We didn't lose as much of the width as I thought we would. We ended up very close to the width of the original oval. So the customer's happy, and the Whirlpool design turned out great, just what he was looking for. In my opinion, a gem cutter of any experience would be able to cut the Whirlpool design. There's a lot of facets, but the pattern's straightforward and not difficult. I think you ought to give it a try. So please let me know in the comments what you think of this gemstone, what you think it may be made of, and what you think of the Whirlpool design. And as always, happy fasting, everyone.